In the news tonight, as Damascus says victory is near in retaking the eastern city of Aleppo, the terrorists entered the ancient city of Palmyra for the first time since losing the city earlier this year. The U.S. President orders intelligence agencies to review cyber attacks and foreign intervention into the 2016 election and deliver a report before he leaves office in January. And the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize winner says an accord to end a 52-year-old civil war with Marxist rebels in Colombia was a ray of hope for solving conflicts from Syria to South Sudan. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. Daesh terrorists entered and captured most of the Syrian city of Palmyra after penetrating Syrian army defenses and security strategic heights around the ancient city following a surprise assault. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said there were fears for the lives and safety of civilians inside the city. The war monitor said with the exception of the southern parts, most of the city was now in the hands of the terrorists after they had taken strategic heights near the city, including major silos and mountains around it. The Syrian army had earlier said it sent reinforcements to Palmyra, with warplanes carrying out air raids in the area in an effort to take back positions lost. The terrorist group's assault began late on Thursday, and the fighting was some of the fiercest in the area since the Syrian army recaptured Palmyra after nearly 2 years in March. Still in Syria, the military and Russian warplanes bombarded rebel-held districts of Aleppo, with the rebels fighting back and army advances halted after rapid gains during the week. The army launched an attack in an area near the old city. Russia says the Syrian government now controls 93% of Aleppo. The rebels are holed out in a handful of areas, mostly south of the historic city, having lost nearly 3/4 of territory they controlled for years in the space of around 2 weeks. Meanwhile, newly returned locals express grief and sorrow at the damage to Aleppo's old city. Some had just returned for the first time in 5 years to find the city in ruins. Some areas of UNESCO World Heritage Old City were completely destroyed by the fighting, while old markets and bathhouses had been flattened. And while some returned to Aleppo, thousands more fled as rebels and government forces exchanged artillery and mortar fire across the city. The Russian Defense Ministry said today alone more than 20,000 civilians left Aleppo and over 1,200 rebels have laid down their arms. The ministry released aerial images of streams of people pouring along Aleppo's narrow streets.
Today, only in the first half of the day, over 20,000 civilians left the eastern quarters of the city. 1,217 militants laid down their arms. As you can see on the screen, people are living in a constant flow through the humanitarian corridors to the places controlled by the Syrian government. Syrian authorities control 93% of the city today.
Meanwhile, backers of the Syrian opposition appeared resigned to the fall of eastern Aleppo, with the United States pleading Moscow to show grace when officials meet in Geneva later today to try to reach a deal for civilians and fighters to leave the city. Speaking in Paris after a meeting of countries that oppose President Bashar al-Assad, including France, Britain, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry showed little optimism for U.S. and Russian talks in Geneva. Moscow and Washington have discussed a ceasefire to let civilians escape eastern Aleppo and aid enter, but Russia also wants the United States to urge rebel fighters to abandon their territory and accept transport out. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said Germany will do whatever it can to find solutions and use whichever means, like truces and humanitarian aid, to find a solution to the crisis. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault said no agreement had been reached at the Paris meeting, adding, however, that the Syrian opposition did announce it was willing to resume the talks without conditions.
We believe that rather than embolden the opposition, rather than encouraging its backers to keep fighting, attract more extremists, create another wave of refugees fleeing the country, Russia and Assad have a moment here where they are obviously in a dominant position they have an ability to be able to show a little grace. And sometimes in diplomacy, a little grace goes a long way.
We want to rebuild Syria to allow everyone who has left because of the war to be able to come back and live in peace, freedom and security.
In Iraq, the Iraqi army said it took full control of 2 more districts of East Mosul, pushing back Daesh terrorists in a slow and hard-fought advance into the city. A military statement said elite counter-terrorism service troops took over the neighborhoods of Al-Murur and Al-Qadisiyya Al-Ula, expanding the area of control in east of the city. Despite the advance, the army's progress in Mosul remains painstakingly slow, facing brutal counter-attacks from the terrorists. In southern Mosul, army troops engaged in heavy machine gun clashes with the group near the town of Shirqat. The Ministry of Defense also released footage of airstrikes they had carried out targeting Daesh hideouts in Nineveh and Salah ad-Din provinces. A suicide bomber killed at least 50 Yemeni soldiers at a base in the city of Aden in another major attack claimed by Daesh. 70 others were wounded as they lined up to collect salaries at the entrance to the Saulaban base on the outskirts of the city when the attacker blew himself up. The Yemeni branch of Daesh, based in Iraq and Syria, has carried out many deadly bombings around troops in the southern port city, which is under the control of the internationally recognized government in exile in Saudi Arabia. At least 10,000 people have been killed in the 20-month Yemeni conflict, which has unleashed a humanitarian crisis on the impoverished country. OPEC and non-OPEC producers reached their first deal since 2001 to curtail oil output jointly and ease a global glut after more than 2 years of low prices and overstretched many budgets and spurred unrest in some countries. Producers from outside the 13-country group agreed to reduce output by 558,000 barrels per day, short of the initial target of 600,000 barrels per day, but still the largest contribution by non-OPEC ever. Of that, Russia will cut 300,000 barrels per day. With the deal finally signed after almost a year of arguing within OPEC and mistrust in the willingness of non-OPEC Russia to play ball, the market's focus will now switch to compliance with the agreement. The Nobel Prizes for Physics, Chemistry, Medicine, Literature and Economic Sciences were handed out at a royal ceremony in Stockholm. But the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize ceremony was held in the Norwegian capital Oslo, with Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos receiving the award. Santos won the 2016 Peace Prize for his resolute efforts to bring his country's 5-decade-long civil war, in which 220,000 people died, to an end. After 6 years of serious and often intense, difficult negotiations, a peace accord was reached between the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the country's largest rebel group. As he collected his Nobel Peace Prize, Santos said that an accord to end a 52-year civil war offered hope for solving conflicts from Syria to South Sudan. Santos collected the prize, a gold medal, diploma, and a check for $870,000 US.
The award has been made to President Santos alone, but it is also intended as a tribute to the Colombian people, a people who, despite great hardships and countless injustices, have never given up the hope for a just peace.
Que esta noticia llegó como un regalo del cielo.
This piece of news came as a gift from heaven, at a time when our ship felt adrift. The Nobel Peace Prize was the tailwind that helped us reach our destination, the port of peace. Thank you very much. The sun of peace finally shines in the heavens of Colombia. May its light shine upon the entire world.
The CIA has concluded that Russia intervened in the 2016 presidential campaign to help President-elect Donald Trump win the White House, and not just to undermine confidence in the U.S. electoral system. Citing U.S. officials briefed on the matter, The Washington Post yesterday reported that intelligence agencies had identified individuals with connections to the Russian government who provided thousands of hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee, including Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, to WikiLeaks. U.S. intelligence analysts have assessed with high confidence that at some point in the extended presidential campaign, Russian President Vladimir Putin's government had decided to try to bolster Trump's chances of winning. An official familiar with the findings said that the Russians appear to have concluded that Trump had a shot at winning and that he would be much friendlier to Russia than Clinton would be, especially on issues such as maintaining economic sanctions and imposing additional ones. U.S. President Barack Obama ordered intelligence agencies to review cyber attacks and foreign intervention into the 2016 election and deliver a report before he leaves office on January 20th. ExxonMobil Corp Chief Executive Officer Rex Tillerson emerged as President-elect Trump's leading candidate for U.S. Secretary of State. A senior transition official said Trump met Tillerson last week and may talk to him again today, adding that Tillerson had moved ahead in Trump's deliberations over Mitt Romney. Tillerson's favorite status was revealed as former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani formally withdrew from consideration for Secretary of State. Should Tillerson be nominated, his business ties with some will come under scrutiny. ExxonMobil has operations in more than 50 countries and boasts that it explores for oil and natural gas on 6 continents. Tillerson has been chairman and CEO of ExxonMobil since 2006. The Vatican kicked off the holiday season with the annual lighting of the Christmas tree in St. Peter's Square. This year, the tree is 25 meters high and has come from the Italian town of Scorelle near the northern city of Trento. The lighting coincided with the unveiling of the Nativity crib, this year coming from Malta.
Quando io darò il via, contiamo da 10 a 1, 2, 1, via! Hey!
And Athens inaugurated its holiday season by holding a concert and lighting up a large boat made of twinkling lights in the capital's central Syntagma Square. The Christmas boat, a traditional seasonal decoration in the maritime nation, is a symbolic centerpiece of the festive program, which is rich despite the financial crisis. Over the next 3 weeks, Athenians and visitors will be enjoying open-air music concerts and dance shows, performances by street theater artists, and games for children. And just south of the Arctic Circle, the northern lights lit up the night sky in Rovaniemi, Finland. The atmospheric conditions on the sun fueled another breathtaking display, turning the skies a swirling green and prompting tourists and locals alike to rush outside to watch. Stargazers say the northern lights appeal due to a high coronal hole on the surface of the sun, coupled with strong solar winds. Frenchman Jean-Frédéric Chaput cruised to victory in the men's World Cup ski cross race. Chaput led from start to finish to secure his win ahead of fellow Frenchman Sylvain Mialet. The women's event saw plenty of drama with the Swedish pair of Anna Holmund and Sandra. After a frustrating first half, Barcelona beat Osasuna 3-0 to get back to winning ways in the league following 3 consecutive draws. Luis Suarez, Andres Iniesta and Lionel Messi missed clear early chances to break the deadlock. Osasuna squandered 2 chances to take a shock lead, but Suarez finally found a way through in the 52nd minute. Messi sealed the points in the 72nd minute and in stoppage time put in the 3rd. Barca are second in the standings, 3 points behind Real Madrid. Osasuna remain bottom of the standings. And finally, cold conditions continue in most regions for the rest of tonight, with partly cloudy skies and northwesterly light winds. Relatively cold weather prevails across the kingdom tomorrow, with a high of 11 degrees Celsius in Amman and the winds northwesterly light to moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect fair conditions, while winds will be northerly light and the seas calm. Here now is the look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. As Damascus says victory is near in retaking the eastern city of Aleppo from Daesh, the terrorists entered the ancient city of Palmyra for the first time since losing the city earlier this year. The U.S. President orders intelligence agencies to review cyber attacks and foreign intervention into the 2016 election and deliver a report before he leaves office in January. And the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize winner says an accord to end the 52-year-old civil war with Marxist rebels in Colombia was a ray of hope for solving conflicts from Syria to South Sudan. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Atqan. Thank you for joining us.